Consciousness is what I am. Chapter 1. Number 1. Every day there should be a period in which we close our eyes and turn within. Let us think of our mind as a door. Since consciousness is omnipresent, the moment we open the door, this infinity floods us and we are under grace. Number 2. How do we human beings free ourselves from those circumstances and conditions of earth which govern and limit man, over which he seems to have no control? Number 3. Nothing can happen to us except through our consciousness. If I am not consciously aware of something, it cannot happen to me. Number 4. As we close our eyes and turn within, we find ourselves in a blackness, a darkness, but that very place where that darkness is our means of access to infinity. Number 5. Impartation comes from the centre to the circumference of us, from the depths of our being to the surface of that being. Number 6. I, the soul of us, stands at the door of our consciousness and knocks. Number 7. We have to open the door. We have to admit spirit consciously. Chapter 2. Whatever is spiritual, eternal and immortal in us is our true being. That which is mortal, human and finite is not an expression of consciousness but an illusion and cannot be raised up to the celestial atmosphere. Number 2. The reason for discords or inharmonies of any nature is a false sense of I. Number 3. The only problem that anyone ever has is I, and if there were no I would have no problem. Number 4. There is only one error in all the world, and that is entertaining a false sense of I. Number 5. The solution to problems, individually and collectively, is to gain the correct sense of I. Number 6. The I that we are entertaining, the I which concerns itself with how this universe should be run, is not I at all. It is a false sense of I. Number 7. I at the centre of me is the governing factor in all my experiences, and the power is upon its shoulders. Number 8. In meditating, we never take a problem into the meditation. Number 9. In meditation, we commune with the real I of a person's being. As we do that, harmony begins to appear. Number 10. If I keep the person as a human being with a problem out of my thought and hold fast to his spiritual reality, gradually I bring his true identity into manifestation as his life. Number 11. Man has no intelligence of his own. Only consciousness is infinite intelligence, and there is no person except consciousness appearing. Number 12. There is only consciousness manifest as individual being. Chapter 3. Number 1. We must hold the principle of one power and dismiss the belief in two powers. Number 2. Another principle basic to the infinite way is that there is only one self. Number 3. The universal belief is that supply is outside in the world and that we must struggle to get it. But the truth is, I am supply. Number 4. I am is not a power that acts upon us. It is a power that acts through us and as us. Number 5. When we realize that the self that we really are is pure consciousness, it is clear that that self does not need glamorizing. Number 6. The mind is not you or I. It is not my mind, his mind, her mind. Number 7. The mind itself is like a pane of glass. It is not a power that creates light. It is a transparency through which light shines. Number 8. The unconditioned mind is a pure transparency. Number 9. It is not your thought that adds a cubit to you, but when you are receptive to that which comes from the depths within you, the earth melts. Number 10. Mind is not something separate and apart from body. Mind is the essence and substance of it. Number 11. It is only because consciousness never made sin, disease and lack that you can feel completely free within yourself that these are going to disappear out of your life. Chapter 4, Number 1. I am not a body, and even without a body I would be intact. But without consciousness I am nothing. Consciousness is what I am. Number 2. Behind the body and mind is consciousness. Number 3. Why should you take thought when the consciousness that formed you is responsible for maintaining and sustaining you? Number 4. The personal sense of self must learn to stop taking thought and let consciousness reveal its life. Number 5. Recognize yourself as consciousness and adopt the listening ear. Chapter 5. Number 1. There is an invisible substance or essence called consciousness, which can be experienced but never defined or analysed. Number 2. Consciousness is not only eternal and omnipresent, but it is our individual consciousness or awareness, the substance, cause and law of individual being. Number 3. The only way to be released is to realize that the I which you are is consciousness, not form, consciousness, not mind. Number 4. The first temptation is to use human force, mental or physical force, and begin to combat the enemy, whereas the most difficult thing in the world is to close ourselves in tight and realize we need not resist discord. Chapter 6. Number 1. Consciousness draws us back to itself. Number 2. We began as pure, infinite consciousness, and there is a force working in us, dispelling and dissolving the belief in two powers. Number 3. Spiritual consciousness is projecting itself in and through human consciousness, leading us forward step by step. Number 4. Question. What is the height of spiritual progress? Answer. Dying to the self and losing one's human sense of life. Number 5. Behind the physical or visible world, consciousness is pushing itself into expression as individual awareness. Number 6. This light of being is breaking through human consciousness collectively, so that generation after generation, man's state of consciousness becomes more and more a transparency through which this light can come. Chapter 7. Number 1. There is in reality only one consciousness, but we entertain a material sense of that consciousness that depends on the outer world for its good. Number 2. Spiritual consciousness is not subject to material or mental laws or powers because they are not power. Number 3. To the degree that we have attained spiritual consciousness, even the body itself appears as light rather than matter, as incorporeality rather than corporeality. Number 4. Spiritual consciousness is untouched by the beliefs of this world. Number 5. A person anchored in truth can look at germs, bullets, bombs, and not resist or fight them, not try to overcome them or do away with them, but realize they have no power. Number 6. Exercise. For contemplation. Consciousness is the only power, the only substance, the only activity, the only law. All power there is must be spiritual. Number 7. All human life is dedicated to acquiring. The truth is that we embody within ourselves infinite supply, and no more can be added to us. Number 8. Consciousness is the source from which we have to begin, and whatever is to evolve comes from that consciousness. Number 9. The bread that you cast on the water is the bread that is going to come back as your supply. Number 10. Begin to evolve spiritually by living from the standpoint of what you can give or add to the world. Number 11. One of the greatest gifts we have is the gift of prayer. Prayer for our enemies, for the world, and for our neighbour. Number 12. Any demonstration that merely provides for our needs alone is not a spiritual demonstration. 13. Spiritually, the increase cannot occur until the outgo has taken place. In the spiritual universe, we pay money out in order that it may come in. Number 14. Companionship is not something we get from another. Companionship is something we give to another. Number 15. How many of us have for many years believed that others were holding us in condemnation, unforgiveness, or holding grievances against us, not realizing that we were doing it and not they? Number 16. Spiritual consciousness is a realization that within you is the substance of all that is to appear in your world, whereas material consciousness is a belief that you acquire, accomplish, and achieve from the outside. Number 17. Spiritual consciousness is an awareness that all you need flows to you from within your own being. Chapter 8, Number 1. Invisible life fulfills itself tangibly and visibly. Number 2. There cannot be consciousness and anything else. Consciousness must exist as the substance of all that is. Number 3. The only taking thought we should do is to acknowledge the omnipresence of spirit, and then let that realization manifest itself, not in what we call our due time, but its due time. Number 4. The only demonstration that is possible in the infinite way is the demonstration of the presence of consciousness, and once we demonstrate that, goodwill will unfold in infinite form and variety. Number 5. Exercise. Awake in the morning and realize, I am living here and now, and the consciousness that dwells in me goes before me to perfect this day. It performs all that is given me to do. It perfects that which concerns me. My only function is to be and to bear witness. Number 6. As we stand still and bear witness, our good will unfold from an invisible source through an invisible power operating on the visible universe. Number 7. The consciousness that brings up the sun, brings the buds into bloom, is also invisibly working in us to bring forth its fruitage as our individual life. Number 8. Nothing can come into our experience except through our consciousness. So what our life will be depends on what we entertain in consciousness. Number 9. Our responsibility is to be still and let omnipresence flow. Number 10. We do not have to think thoughts of generosity, forgiveness, or abundance. We have only to abide in omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence, and consciousness flows through. Then love and generosity pours through, but we have not taken thought about it. Number 11. Our consciousness externalizes as whatever form is necessary to us. No one can take what is ours away from us. Number 12. There is not consciousness and our business. Our business is our consciousness in a specific form. The bread that we have cast on the waters is ours, and it cannot fall into anyone else's hands. Number 13. Everything in the visible realm comes forth from the invisible. Number 14. Stillness and listening are our access to infinity. Number 15. If we admit having a need, we externalize the need. Number 16. Exercise. I live in the now. Now I admit the presence of the invisible into my consciousness, and I let that work in me as I go about my daily tasks. Number 17. Our very being contains within itself everything that we shall ever need from now until eternity. Number 18. We must develop the practice of being beholders and watch as these things appear in our life. Number 19. We must develop that inner beholding which creates a vacuum. Then whatever we need flows into expression. Chapter 9, Number 1. The consciousness that formed the body in the beginning is the consciousness that maintains and sustains it. Number 2. The nutritional value of our food is in our consciousness. Number 3. I consciously withdraw power from the outer realm and place it where it belongs, in consciousness. Number 4. We must pass from the belief that something external has power over us to the realization that all power is derived from consciousness. Number 5. In reality, there is only one power in this universe, all good. We can never make anything evil in our experience by thinking it so, but that does not mean that it is of itself evil. Number 6. Recognizing consciousness as the only substance that is self-created and self-maintained, it must be good, or it could not last eternally or immortally. And if it is good in any form in which it appears. Number 7. Consciousness at the center of my being is the law of my experience, and it is the law of love unto me. Number 8. Consciousness at the center of my being draws unto me everything necessary for my good. It acts as a law of elimination to everything not necessary to my spiritual unfoldment and development. Number 9. Our beliefs are non-existent powers, but they operate as real until we consciously eliminate the belief and exchange it for truth. Chapter 10, Number 1. There is no mental effort in spiritual healing. Number 2. Appearances are but a shadow, an image in mind. Number 3. When a person recognizes consciousness as infinite, omnipresent life, he must then realize that all discord is only the projection of the belief in two powers. Number 4. Inner stillness dissolves the erroneous pictures. Number 5. The carnal mind and all its activities are nothing. In reality, there is no mind to be called carnal. Number 6. Error in and of itself is not a power. It is merely a belief. Number 7. The object of the infinite way work is to bring your consciousness to that place where you rise above merely a belief in consciousness and come into the experience of communion with the invisible. Number 8. Mortality is nothing but an illusion of sense. You do not try to heal it, cure it, or get rid of it. You recognize it as the nothingness it is. Number 9. No longer hating, fearing, or loving the powers of this world, you realize they only exist as temporal power when you give power to them. Number 10. Exercise. Contemplate. Consciousness is the substance of all being and the law of all being. Number 11. Recognize appearance as an illusion, a mirage, and know that you can go forward because you're not afraid of a mirage and nothing has to be done about it. Number 12. You cannot meet a problem on the level of a problem. Number 13. Error is a temptation to believe in two powers. Number 14. Discord is not in, of, or through a person. It is not appearing as person. It is something separate and apart from person. It must be nothingness. It cannot have an existence apart from the mind that is believing in two powers. Chapter 11. Number 1. There is always an awareness of the presence going before us. Number 2. The relationship between teacher and student is an eternal relationship if the student will have it so. Number 3. Since consciousness is that I embody in my consciousness all that belongs to me. And since there is no such thing as time and space, this all happens now, and this all happens here where I am. Number 4. Exercise. Open your consciousness and realize that I do not exist in time or space. The only place I can exist for you is in your consciousness. Number 5. You exist as consciousness, and you can admit into your consciousness or drop from your consciousness whomever you wish. Number 6. Have we ever received any benefit from another except the benefit of consciousness? Number 7. In the absence of our loved ones, for any reason, there will be no sense of loss or separation, because we will know that we have no physical relationship. Our relationship is one of consciousness. Number 8. All misery arises from the belief that we are separate from one another, from people, our supply, our home, employment. Number 9. Every time we consciously impersonalize and realize that neither discord, disease, nor false appetite is a part of our being, but that it is merely a universal belief in two powers, that is developing our fourth dimensional consciousness. Number 10. Recognize that I in the midst of me is really the source of my supply, health, and harmony. Number 11. Every meditation that turns us within to let the hidden splendor flow is uplifting consciousness. Chapter 12. Number 1. The light reveals itself in consciousness. This is the spiritual nature of all being. Number 2. Every bit of spiritual light which you and I as individuals attain increases the amount that is loosed into the world. Number 3. Those who are realizing spiritual principles are forming the consciousness of the new generation. Number 4. Every truth that we know and every healing that takes place through our consciousness helps to establish that healing grace in human consciousness.